So your first step to make up for today's class is to follow along with what we worked on during the do now and the first activity. You're going to need some lined paper in order to follow along, so make sure that you have lined paper with you. You can always pause this video to get some. The first thing I'd like you to work on independently is the do now. We went over a couple fractions problems to study for tomorrow's quiz, which you will take even if you're on quarantine. So go ahead and answer these two questions for me. 2/5 plus 1/2 and 3/4 minus 1/3. So pause this video and answer these questions, and then we'll talk. All right, so you should have given these two questions a try on your own. I'm going to go over them here. Let's start with 2/5 plus 1/2. So we know that our first step when we're adding fractions is we need to find the least common denominator. And to find the least common denominator, I want to list out the multiples of both of my denominators. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Now from this list, I can see that I have a least common multiple of 10, but if I didn't find one, I would have had to keep going to make a longer list. Once I find the least common denominator, I want to find my equivalent fractions. And I find my equivalent fractions by asking myself, 2 over 5 is equal to what over 10? And 1 over 2 is equal to what over 5? So here's how we'll set it up. And this is a lot like what we've practiced with equivalent ratios. So we know that we can multiply 5 times 2 to get 10, which means we also need to multiply 2 times 2 to get 10, and we end up with 4/10. And with 1/2, we know that 2 times 5 is 10, so we'll also multiply the numerator times 5, and we end up with 5 over 10. And so then I can rewrite my original problem, right? I end up with, instead of 2/5, I have 4 over 10. And instead of 5/10, I have, or instead of 1/2, I should say, I have 5/10. And so my final answer is 9 over 10. All I did was change these fractions to equivalent fractions with a common denominator of 10. And we would follow the exact same steps for a subtraction problem. In fact, I'm going to copy and paste my steps. And I want to find the least common denominator again. This time my numbers, or my denominators, are 4 and 3. So I'll list out my multiples of 4 and 3. 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, and 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So I can see my least common denominator is 12. And then once again, I want to create equivalent fractions. So 3 over 4 equals something over 12. And 1 over 3 also equals something over 12. Now I know that I can simply multiply 4 times 3 to get 12, so I'll do the same thing to the numerator. And when I'm talking about thirds, I'm multiplying the numerator and the denominator times 4. So I end up with 9 over 12 and 4 over 12, and I'm going to replace 3/4 with 9/12, and I'm going to replace 1/3 with 4/12. So I end up with 9/12 minus 4/12, which is 5 over 12. Okay, so that was our first step during class today, was practicing with these fractions problems. The second thing that we practiced during class today was inverse operations. So you can go ahead and draw a line underneath your do now. And we reviewed how when you have a number, let's say 5, times a mystery number, and you know the product, like let's say the product is 12.5, we can divide the product, which is 12.5, divided by 5, and that will tell us what the missing factor is. In this case, it's 2.5, and I can test that out because 5 times 2.5 does in fact equal 12.5, and so I know that I found the correct missing factor, right? So I'm simply dividing the product I know divided by the factor I know, and that will tell me what the missing factor is. So let's try a few more problems. If you know 7 times some missing number is equal to 23.5, go ahead and write the division sentence on your paper that would find you the missing number. So your division sentence should have been 23.5 divided by 7, because we're dividing the product we know divided by the factor we know, and 23.5 divided by 7 is equal to 3.35, which is what will belong here in our multiplication sentence. And this is a great tool when we're looking for kind of wonky decimal answers. This actually is a repeating decimal, so it's not the best example, but it'll work to find out an approximation of what we're multiplying by. Let me give you a better example. If I said that 4.5 times some mystery number is 24.75, what's your division sentence? And when I ask this question, you should be pausing the video to work it out on your own. So I want to divide 24.75 divided by 4.5, and I end up with 5.5. And if I check my work and multiply, 4.5 times 5.5 does equal 24.5. And so the takeaway from this portion of class, we just did some practice on whiteboards, is that you can always divide the products divided by the factor that you know, whatever factor you know, in order to find the missing number in that multiplication sentence. And this is important when we're working across ratio tables because, for example, if you had a ratio table where you had 4.5 in one column and 24.75 in another column, you would need to use this strategy to help you find the constant of proportionality. Okay, so at the end of this video, you should be sending me an email with a paper copy of your notes. Please follow the rest of the steps that are listed under today's page, so just right underneath this video, to know what else you need to make up.